Hello everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Insider Information, a series that's aiming to delve into aspects of the economy that I'm sure you've heard of, but might not know the full extent of. I'm your usual host and clueless outside of the world of economics, Jin'taan, and with me today is Caleb of the Invisible Exchequer, and more importantly, our honoured guest, Jeronica from EVE-Mogul. Say hello, Jeronica.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great, thank you. So, just before we get into this, can you talk me through a little bit of your bona fides? You know, where do you come from in the e-financial world? What do you specialize in? And also, just so you can rest your nuts on the table, how much ISK do you generally make a month?
I started this about 5 years ago. I needed a way to track profits doing station trading, so I started building this website. People really liked it, so I kept expanding it. And then I guess about 3 or 4 years ago, CCP came out with Citadels and Offshoring and all that. I'm like, hey, this is like right up my alley. So I figured out what needed to be done to start the offshoring process,
So you were kind of the first in on the market.
Yeah, like Mogul came around at the most opportune time at all. Yeah, definitely.
It's one of those things in business, right? It's all about timing, and you came in exactly when we needed you. I keep calling you a little bit of the EVE market messiah, because all the project that had died and the people that were leaving, and then you came in with Mogul and basically reinvigorated the whole meta market. It was amazing times.
Yeah, you could kind of see the market discussion forums kind of teeter off, and it's something I wanted to change, and now I'm doing the best I can to do that. As far as income, if you're a shareholder, you get shareholder reports, and you can see what I make from that. So,
are you saying that I'd have to buy your shares to find out? That's a true marketeer's answer. That is. I'm proud of you.
Publish it to the public as well. I actually just published one a couple days ago.
You just need one share to be invited to the General Assembly.
All right. Can you give us a rough estimate at all?
So typically hisec structures, not counting the market hubs, they make about 2% a month off the initial investment. So if it's a Satio at about 150 bill, you're going to be making about like 3 or 4 bill a month off that. So it's a long-term investment. However, if you want to know about the market hubs, those are completely different, and we'll be talking about that later on in this show.
Yeah,
it's also one of the tragedies, right? Because there's not a lot to do when it comes to public offerings, because the design of the game still really doesn't allow it. There's not enough room to actually profit on all these types of businesses. So the only thing that could really generate enough growth would be something like the Mogul subscription model. And that's, again, not so nice when you got a number of players actually dropping in the games.
Yeah. So you talked earlier about you own structures in order to kind of enable offshoring. So why don't you quickly go through what offshoring is and how it gives traders an advantage that they can use in the market? Like, what would you use as a trader? You know, how would you use it, basically?
Sure. So offshoring is a method of trading where you use a player-built citadel to basically just slim your margins. In a station right now, I think the lowest you can get is like 2% broker fees. And in a citadel, that can be as low as 0%. So if you're trading in a Satio or another market hub, that you're basically already 2% ahead of anyone else trading in the station. Typically, you do a one jump range order, so everything fills in the station still, and you just sell from there, doing the same 2% broker fee there plus the sales tax. But you're still 2% ahead of everyone else, which is pretty huge when you're talking about high volume items like Plex and injectors and all that, which is what offshoring is primarily used for.
So if I understand that correct, you're saying putting a buy order up for Plex or skill injectors in a public citadel or any citadel with a market module, and then that allows you to buy the item remotely and skip out on the tax? Is that how it
You
works?
skip out on the
Okay.
broker fees, right? You still
So
have to pay the
it's
tax.
kind of capture only tax evasion.
Yeah, it definitely is that.
You're running a
That's
public
important, right?
tax
Because-
evasion fund. I love it. Only an EVE.
But it's the great leveler, right? It's very important to point that out, right? A new character that uses offshoring does not have to fight on standing to benefit from a lower broker fee. So it's a great leveler and an equalizer.
Yeah, before you had pretty much get faction standings and corporate standings to lower your broker fees, and that takes time, or you could pay someone to do it for you. But this gives everyone the same level playing field, which is something I like to talk about or touch on later on as well when we start talking about competition and all that.
Yeah, I'd actually like to just dig a little deeper into this. So what are these kind of traders that we're talking about here that are using offshoring? Because I know you're a level above them, effectively. You use their actions to make you money. But what are these guys doing? Are they just flipping Plex? Are they, buying it and then selling it and just... Or, how are they making their money here?
Yeah, it's all about probably 90% of the trading in Jita offshoring citadels is
Wow.
the RMT market, so Plex and skull injectors and stuff. So they're just buying and selling and flipping in just general station trading, pretty much.
Just creating liquidity in the market, basically.
Well, it's also because it's no longer location-based, right? It's an extremely non-location sensitive item, right? You don't care if you get your Plex in Perimeter or New Caldari or Jita, it doesn't matter, especially now with the Vault. Whereas if you do the same with, say, high-volume items like Tritanium, you're going to end up with weird stacks everywhere within the range of your offshoring.
Yeah, and I had that issue before when we first started, is I would do Tritanium orders. Because the difference I have versus, say, I Choose You or Horde Structures is that I have a CTO and I kind of want to have people build there. So I started up a public offering called the Mogul Mineral Reserve, and that is basically what is funding the stocking of these CTOs with minerals. So it kind of like double dips, because I make money off the stocking, and then people use the minerals built there in the same structure to build, and then I make money off the industry fees. And that's
so you're
kinda,
so you're creating these kind of like mini industry hubs.
yeah, essentially, yeah. And I've seen it work in, we have 6 CTOs right now, and they're all doing the same thing, listing minerals there, and they're kind of growing in their own sense.
So that's crazy. Like, that's such an interesting way of using EVE. I've never thought of kind of the depth of that before. That's crazy. So you're the guy who's owning the structures, and you talked a little bit there about how you make money when you're doing that with a Soy Toyo. But how does owning these market hubs, these offshoring stations near Amar or Jitta really help you? How does that make you money? Is it all advertising for these other things, or is there a way it generates money itself?
So my structures, we do have a broker fee attached to it. It's not 0%. We have, right now it's 0.3% across the board, and that's what funds the rest of the business, pretty much. So I use that to offset a lot of the costs of the other things. I just anchored about 70 bill in Athenors for moon mining, and that's going to be about 6 bill a month in fuel right there. And these other market hubs are kind of subsidizing that in a sense until they come to profitability.
And we should mention that we're a little bit crippled still by CCP design, right? We don't have a two-tiered system on payments of fees, and then we still have things like the percentage of a percent, which basically makes it look as if Jeronica in Mogul is taking 10% of of the fees, but they're not. It's 10% of 10%, which is 1%. So we have these things that CCP has not fixed yet and haven't actually improved for player-owned structures. It's the same with things like the industry index, that we don't have the same advantage on industry except for the bonuses like we do with, say, the offshoring. So we still have a way to go to really get to a point where player-owned structures make sense.
Yeah, and I believe that when CCP finally does do something with the cost index formula, we're going to be in the best spot out of everyone to capitalize on that. Other than huge no blocks like Goons or other alliances, but huge infrastructures.
And then you will actually start getting the potential of things that we are going to talk about a little bit later in detail, but things like competition and actual hiring of mercenaries and disrupting your competitors. But you can't do that if you don't have an income stream.
Yeah, there's no need to.
So I want to move this along, and you talked there a little bit about the competitors here, Caleb. So who else is kind of trying to muscle in with you on this scene? Because you've talked there about how you can use this to fund, other aspects of your business. Surely there must be other people fighting for this ISK. Who else is trying to muscle in on your territory, as it were?
In the Forge, that's basically Horde territory. I do pay Horde some ISK to be there, but it's definitely worth it for us to be in that position.
The racketeering and protection money.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. I do pay them money. But they also kill off these 0% citadels that affect my business as well. So
a true protection racket. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
You don't see those every day.
And you would see more of that if the profitability was actually increased. So that would mean that we would get even more fun in this area. And it brings on a small thing that I would like to mention, that because you didn't need that much actual fees on the RMT trade with Plex, you could actually just have a very small market share and you would be able to pay for a new structure the month after if you got it destroyed, which is why no one really cared about defending themselves, because you would easily be able to recuperate the losses and still be making a profit.
Yeah, one thing I've got to ask, though, is who else is dropping down those 0% citadels? Citadels aren't cheap, Who's trying to get in the way of Pandemic Horde and yourself from making money?
I've got my suspicions. I believe a lot of it is people who don't like Horde, and a single Asbel costs maybe 4 bill to build, and then the market hub another bill. So 5 bill to pretty much ruin Horde's income for 2 weeks is pretty substantial. But the new patch changes, though, it makes it a lot harder for structures to kind of encroach on that territory, though. So
yeah. Now, obviously, it would be stupid for you to reveal if it cost more than 5 bill than you paid out 5 bill or anything like that. So I will leave that question well enough alone. But is there anyone else? Is there anyone trying to muscle in your domain in domain, for example?
So I work with Mercenary Coalition and VMG in domain, and Botane actually too so Ashab and Botane are the other 2 market hubs I have Satios in, and I work with VMG and Mercenary Coalition in those. But there's no
VMG being the Vendetta mercenary group, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning NETC, right? They started doing things like trying to roll out a structures network and all that stuff. And they tried to go too big, too fast, and there's a lot of controversy about that. The point is that when Mogul started out, they started out with a product that was not necessarily directly sensitive to the activity in-game. That means that they had some starting stuff, and that's why they've been growing organically. And they're smaller than the NETC was, but it's natural growth.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So is there anyone else other than those groups you've mentioned, or is the kind of scene just static for now? Is it just a balance of power between yourself and Horde and Mercenary Coalition and all that?
Honestly, there's no one really else out there who's trying to be. I like to call us a service provider, and there's no one else really offering that to people. At least not in the capacity that I do with Satios and
So you see yourself as almost like an addition to the SEC. You know, you're a part of the infrastructure almost, or you'd like to think of yourself that way.
And it's a huge potential. It's also why I think the next thing you might see is things like the logistic groups like Red Frog and PushX start considering using structures in how they bring in logistics network.
Yeah, I know they already do like midpoint citadels and stuff for the jump raiders. And
Yep, you can actually buy a PushX citadel anywhere you want in nullsec and use those to help do your logistics. There you go, Cassie. Hello. That's a free shout out for you. This next one's going to cost you.
It's the incentive that's the problem, right? If CCP does not actually create nice design that we can then use to create these services, there's no incentive for us to create it. Mogul was built on the back of the website, right? Which is basically an out-of-client tool. So you have to have an incentive of it. And I think Jeronica mostly built that for himself initially, and then people just stacked on and liked it and asked for new features and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, a little shout out to Oculus Sermon right there.
Oh yeah, and we should mention that currently Mogul is experimenting with an actual stock exchange. We've had 2 or 3 attempts to do this in the past. One of them was actually running for quite a while, but this is now the 3rd or 4th installment of an actual stock exchange.
So are there any other economic aspects of structures that you'd like to talk about, Jonica?
Not really, honestly. There's broker fees and industry fees, and I guess reprocessing fees, which I guess I could talk about with the with my moon mining systems. So I anchored about 60 Athenors in 2 systems to have a daily moon pool, and anchored a refinery in there just to see if I could capture that refining tax and fund it all. It's more of a concept.
So you're trying to convince people to mine in your moons and then just refine them in the same station because that's easier than taking them somewhere else. Okay, that's really clever. I like that. That's smart.
It's kind of like a nullsec style infrastructure plan where you tax the people with the services, not the mining. And I just wanted to see if it worked, and the verdict's still out, but so I'm not sure quite yet.
I actually have a CCP, please. I do think that we need 2 more things feature-wise for structures. We need a real estate contract so you can actually easily put things up for sale, and you need the option of actually insuring your structures.
That could be interesting. Yeah.
I think insuring your structures is going to see a lot more Asbels dropped in the Forge and Domain, but still, it would be interesting. Any of you two have any final thoughts on structures and kind of how they drive the economic aspects of EVE?
Oh, it's going to be a huge driver in the future. I just don't think we're going to get there until we get version 3.0.
That's actually a good point. What do you think theoretically would happen if CCP just removed all the stations in the game, all the NPC stations, even in hisec?
Well, I've mentioned it a little bit with the problem with infinite slots, but I do think that if we could just start by removing a lot of stations, we don't have to remove all of them, but let's just say that every system only had maximum of 2 NPC stations, that would already help us a lot with the proliferation of structures and the utility of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of redundancy now with stations. There's too many of them, I think. So
yeah, and it would motivate things like ranged buys, right? Ranged buys would make sense. You would not have a problem doing offshoring of TRIT buy orders because you don't get it spread out everywhere if there's only 2 NPC stations per system.
Mm-hmm. Although one thing I would like is to see the offshore market and the Citadel market, not Citadel, station markets, to kind of be separated. So right now you still can't sell to another Citadel from a Citadel. I kind of would like to see that from a station. You couldn't sell to a Citadel because you're basically competing with a regulated market versus a free-for-all, pretty much. And I personally don't think it's healthy. But that's just my opinion.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming on the show, Jeronica. Do you have any final shout-outs before we sign off?
Just my new MC bros. I joined them about 2 months ago and having a good time there.
MC, you mean Mercenary Coalition, the same people defending our citadels.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought it? Caleb?
I would just like to know that they are the masters of swag with Bastion, so shout out to MC. I would just like to say that I'm going to be lobbying hard for some of these things that we've been talking about when I go to FanFest, if I'm not going to get killed by Jin'taan.
Go ahead, I can't stop you. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and fly smart out there.